Good afternoon, and welcome to today's ATI member exclusive education facilitated by GovMates. And we're going to dive into all the really good stuff here in just a quick minute from the DCAA. And I just wanted to give a brief introduction. I am your event host. I am Meg O'Hara, GovMates Director of Engagement, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A, facilitating today's discussion. For those who may not know GovMates or who we are a technology scouting platform connecting small and non-traditional businesses with system integrators and agencies seeking innovative solutions for their federal challenges. So we provide matchmaking, education, resources, and more for ATI and their ecosystem. So as we're letting Caitlin in here, let's see, it says she's connecting, so we like hearing that. In the age of technology, I was actually just having a conversation with somebody earlier today about how we keep updating software, right? We keep updating software, we keep doing new things. And sometimes our devices have not exactly caught up yet. So they try to make things go a little bit easier, but they tend to be a little harder. So on that vein, I am going to give a couple of participation reminders if this is the first time that you are joining us today. First things first is remove those distractions. Caitlin, I see you coming in. We're going to keep this to about an hour or so you can silence your cell phones, close down the tabs, open your, stay out of your email if you can. And then we encourage you to be active in the chat. So I see Heidi says that she can hear, Katie says that she can hear. You should see a Q&A along the bottom. So if you have a question, give that, you can throw your questions there. If you have just a comment, you can give that chat box a run, a little test there. And if you choose all panelists and attendees, then everyone can see your comments. If you choose just host and panelists, then only Caitlin and I will be able to see the things that you are sharing. Hi, Caitlin.
Hey, just doing an audio test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great. So we're all good.
All right, I'm going to go on mute until you're done. Thanks.
Thank you. We will be taking audience questions throughout the discussion. And if something is relevant, then we will make sure to touch on it with the group at large. And if your question is a little bit more nuanced, then we will be happy to provide a way for you to connect with, Caitlin or myself, or find you the information post-event. We will also be recording today's discussion. So I'm pretty sure when you logged in, it says recording in her very professional voice. So if you would like a copy of this, should be emailed to you probably tomorrow as a follow-up. But if you do not receive that in your inbox, check your spam. And if not, just send an email to ati@govmates.com and we will make sure to resend that over to you. So this is where I get to introduce today's panelist, Caitlin. Caitlin is the Operations Audit Liaison and Small Business Coordinator for the Defense Contract Audit Agency. If I have to say that any faster, I will probably trip over it. So one time, you got it one time, you got it good. We will keep that, send that to the bank, right? So you know that she knows her stuff. So Caitlin, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Caitlin Regal. I am the Small Business Outreach Coordinator, Small Business Liaison for Defense Contract Audit Agency. What don't I do at this point? But the main goal for my position is to have as much outreach as possible to small businesses. Any questions that you may have about government contracting, maybe you're kind of stuck when it comes to how do I prepare for an audit, what is going to be expected of me, anything within that auditing and government contracting realm is I am your go-to person for that. Hopefully that answers a little bit. I've been with the agency for about 15 years, actually 15 years in about a week and a half. So I am super happy to be here. I love my job, and I love getting to meet people like Meg here, and all of the small business owners who do reach out to me. It is much appreciated, and you guys definitely keep me busy, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Perfect. First off, congratulations on the almost anniversary. 15 years is lifetimes in GovCon. So congratulations, for real.
Thank you.
And then I'm actually going to turn the floor over to you for content here. So don't forget, everybody put your questions into the Q&A if you have it, or if you can't get to that, need to get to the chat, I'll be monitoring both of those. Caitlin, do you want to share, or do you want me to screen share? For either way is good for me.
If you could share, that would be great. As with any government, thing, I'm on my personal iPad because my government computer does not like Zoom. So if you could share, and I'll just say next slide.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that. Got it pulled up here, so we are ready to go anyway.
Fun, yes.
Perfect. So hopefully you can see all that, and floor is yours. Go for it.
All right, thanks, Meg. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon. We are going to dive into DCAA's new hot topic that's called GovCon, breaking into GovCon from a DCAA perspective. Now, we created this presentation in response to the 2019 GAO Contract Financing Report and the subsequent Defense Pricing and Contracting Finance Study that cited government compliant accounting systems, cost accounting standards, and FAR cost principles as barriers to entry for small businesses looking to enter into the defense industrial base. So during this presentation, DCAA is going to break down the types of contract awards and the requirements for each, as well as talk about common misconceptions that come with FAR, CAS, and TINA. I am going to be discussing a lot of words and acronyms as the government is notorious for using. So I will try and pause and say what those acronyms are. For example, I said FAR, CAS, and TINA. FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, CAS is Cost Accounting Standards, and TINA is Truth in Negotiations Act. So next slide.
And there will be a quiz afterwards. Make sure you know all of that. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, I'm with the government for 15 years. I can be on, Teams calls, anything. And I have 2 monitors, and I am Googling stuff on the side just because it's hard to keep up with all the acronyms. So don't feel bad for not knowing what those acronyms are.
And they can change from like agency to agency as well. So
absolutely, yes. And we'll get into that a little bit too, because I feel like different agencies use different acronyms. So I'm constantly just, what is that again? What is that?
Right.
Or just confirming what I think I already know. Right. So types of government contracts, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR, provides that contract types are grouped into 2 basic categories for compensation purposes. So there's fixed price or cost reimbursable contracts. And now, furthermore, each of these basic categories, the FAR recognizes more specified contract types, each differing in a degree of performance, risk, and in the profit incentive. The government's goals in selecting the proper contract type and the compensation agreement is so the contract award will result in a reasonable contractor risk and gives the contractor the greatest possible incentive for efficient performance. So these are the contract types that we're going to talk about. Again, the 2 basic categories of, and I'm sorry, I'm not looking directly at the screen, so I have dual screens here with, there's a lot going on. I guess I have 3 screens here going. So we have fixed price, cost reimbursable, and then under cost reimbursable, you will find time and material, which is another type of separate from a cost type, but it's still considered cost reimbursable. That's another common misconception. Indefinite delivery contracts, basic ordering agreements, letter contracts. We're going to touch upon each of these in the next few slides. So next one. All right, so fixed price contracts. Here's what you need to know. Firm fixed price, FFP. Fixed price contracts have a preferred status over cost type contracts. Under cost type contracts, the ultimate cost is inherently more uncertain, therefore it's of more risk to the government. Now, at the same time, various fixed price contracts do differ in performance, risk allocation, and degrees of that profit incentive that we were talking about before. So fixed price contracts, FFP, they are not subject to any adjustments. They have the maximum incentive for control costs and performing efficiently, just because once you sign, you have to adhere to all of the contract terms. This is where I take my small business hat off and I put my auditor hat back on and I say, please make sure you're briefing your contracts. It can take a 100-page document down. All of it's important, right? But taking that 100 pages down to 10 pages or 5 pages of the most pertinent information that you really need to pay attention to. And the terms of the contract, what the costs are, making sure that you're monitoring your costs to be in line with what you agreed to, right? So you're not going significantly over or significantly under. Is definitely going to help you guys out as a small business. It's really important to stay on top of those things. So back to the presentation. I'm going to put my small business hat back on. So FFP contracts are subject to audit when the estimated price is over $10 million. And this is per the DFARS PGI threshold. DFARS is the defense supplement to the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And that $10 million is a suggestion. It is not set in stone. So don't think because, you submitted a $7 million FFP proposal to a federal agency that you're in the clear and you're not going to be audited. If the procuring officer does not have the warm and fuzzies or cannot establish a fair and reasonable price to go into negotiations with, they might reach out to DCAA for an audit. So just always keep that in mind. Make sure you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's, and doing what you're supposed to do when it comes to putting your proposals together, and your due diligence with fair and reasonable cost, making sure you are presenting or proposing the best cost that you can. Down here at the bottom, so fixed price with economic price adjustments or the EPAs. Very hot topic right now. So it provides for an upward or a downward revision of labor or material. This will not cover all damages in case of a breach of contract, but it seeks to minimize contingencies subject to that stated adjustment. Again, this is where briefing your contracts is very, very important, especially if you have EPA clauses. Just because you have an EPA clause does not willy-nilly, make you subject to any and sort of all adjustments. It is stated implicitly within the contract terms. So it's important that you know what those terms are. FAR recognizes 3 types, general types of fixed price with EPAs. One is the adjustment based on a catalog or market price established within the contract. Adjustment based on the cost of labor or material that the contractor actually experiences during that contract performance, and then adjustment based on the cost indices of labor and material, again, specifically identified within the contract. That's it for fixed price and fixed price with EPAs. Next slide. Ooh, I gotta take a breath. That was a lot to say in one breath.
Right. It's all, and again, it's the acronyms and it's all the pieces and it's all like the one, right. I think the theme is as defined in the contract. Like, I think that's very much something to remind ourselves that there's no, I hate saying this, but there's no hard and fast rule on anything in GovCon. Like, it's all, it depends, which is my least favorite answer for anything, but definitely as defined in the contract, big, bold words for the entire presentation.
Absolutely. Yep. That's the running theme here. And that is my answer to mostly everything is, well, it depends. And you'll see that if we do get any questions as we go further into this, my answer is it depends. And then I'll probably give scenarios X, Y, and Z. But as far as cost reimbursable contracts go, there are several different kinds. So there's cost plus incentive fee, CPIF, CPAF for the award fee, and CPFF for the fixed fee. There's the descriptions are there. I'm not going to read them verbatim. So for the incentive fee, it's initially negotiated profit that can be adjusted later based on a contractual formula. The award fee is a cost type contract that provides for a base fee that is fixed at the inception, but there's an award on top of that based on the performance seeking excellence in areas such as quality, timeliness, cost-effective management, and stuff like that. Cost plus fixed fee, again, the percentage or the fee is fixed at the time of the contract award, but it could vary based on what the actual costs are. It's a percentage of those costs. Now, there are some prohibitions and limitations. A type of contract award that was previously, I don't want to say popular, but was previously awarded as that cost plus percentage of cost. And there are statutory and regulatory prohibitions against this type of contracting. This is where the government is obligated to pay the contractor's cost, again, undetermined at the time of the contract award, and then profit on the percentage of those future costs. As you can see, there's no incentive to control your cost, and therefore you can let your cost go off the rails and you're going to get a percentage on top of percentage on that cost. So the government caught on pretty quick to that and did away with that. Other limitations, and this is kind of a really good segue into what happens based on if a contract award is fixed price or cost reimbursable, are accounting systems. If it is a cost type or a cost reimbursable award, you need to have an adequate accounting system. If you have a fixed price award and it's based on progress payments, that is also considered a cost reimbursable type because you are billing based on actual cost. So again, you have to have an adequate accounting system, and that is a segue into the next slide, which is not accounting systems. We're still going to talk about contract types. I lied.
It's okay.
So yeah.
I do have one quick question while we're kind of on this before we hop forward a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk.
Give me a quick potential example. Did you say that firm fixed price contracts are lower risk to customers and higher risk to the vendor? Can you give me an example?
Yes, I will. Firm fixed price are of lower risk to the government because, you know, they have that set price. They know what they're spending. And could it be, there are pros and cons to fixed price awards for contractors or for a vendor. You know, the pro is that you have that set price. The con is that, you know, I think we've seen in the past 4 years, prices are going up and down, and it's crazy. So monitoring your cost, staying on top of your costs. So let's say you have a $10 million firm fixed price contract, but you know, material went out of control the past 2 years, and you are $4 million over. Something like that. That's insane. But unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. You got to eat those costs. That's a fixed price, you know, a huge con of a fixed price contract. Now with the cost reimbursable, you kind of have an idea, you kind of have an estimate. As I think if you recall before, I said with firm fixed price proposals, $10 million and over is where you're going to see that interaction with DCAA, where you could potentially see an audit. For cost reimbursable contracts, you won't see DCAA interaction or a potential audit until $100 million or more. And that's because there is more risk to the government for cost type contracts because of that possibility of the fluctuating costs. At that point, it's just, you know, do we have the funds to cover it? You know, there's an agreed to set price, but are you going close to that price? Are you about to go over? Can you request more funding? Can you request more costs? With cost reimbursable contracts, you can have modifications, you can have updates. There's a lot more moving parts to it. So again, the government has more risk ahead of a firm fixed price award because once we're in as well. So we want to make sure we're getting the most for our money, or I should say the best cost for what we need to procure. Cost reimbursable, there's a little bit less risk, and you know, we come in after the fact and we audit costs that are incurred. So it incurred cost audit, and that's incurred after the fact. So that's where DCAA comes in, and we say, you know, is what you have actually incurred applicable, reasonable, and allowable. So those are things we look for after the fact.
Awesome. Thank you.
So there is oversight on both ends.
Right. Perfect. I appreciate that you let me kind of jump in there just so I didn't lose the note on that.
Yeah, no, jump in, please. I don't want to talk all for an hour. Time and material contracts, right? So these are considered a cost reimbursable type contract, T&M for short. That's a specific POP as period of performance. There's a fixed and burdened hourly rate. You may see oftentimes labor categories and labor qualifications within the terms of the contract. So you have the categories, the hourly rates, the estimated amount of hours. It could include reimbursement for material or ODCs or other direct costs. A high level of monitoring. So when we say high level of monitoring, both for the contractor and for the government. LOE right there is a level of effort, and you'll see these types of contract awards for engineering, design, repair, emergency situations. These aren't the most favorable type of contract awards just for the oversight alone. Again, labor hours are very similar, just no materials. Same clauses and provisions apply. Next, other types of contracts. So indefinite delivery, you may often hear them referred to as IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. I don't want to spend too much time on them. There are various types of indefinite delivery contract awards. There is the definite quantity. So it's a defined quantity for a fixed period, no limits on the amount of orders the government can place. Only used when the government knows the exact amount of supplies or services needed during the life of the contract. There's a requirements contract wherein an agency agrees to buy all of its actual purchase requirement for designated supplies or services from a particular supplier, and that supplier agrees to fulfill the agency's need during a period of time. The agency is not required to order a specific amount or a minimum. And then the last one there, the indefinite quantity, provides for an indefinite quantity to be ordered during the contract's period of performance. These types of contract awards include a stated minimum number that the government must purchase. But again, no ceiling to what they could purchase.
Sky's the limit there, literally.
The sky is the limit, baby.
Yeah.
So, and then letter contracts, exactly what they are, exactly what they sound like. These are awarded in a pinch. If they need a quick award or they need the contractor to get doing what they need to do, you will see these types of awards. The essential information for a contract will be included in the letter. The details of, estimated price and statement of work, right? We need to know what we're doing before we do it. General plans will be in there. Literally comes in the form of letters with attachments with the basic elements of a contract. There should be included a negotiation or a definitization schedule, right? Defining the contract at a later date and time. Target date for definitization, typically 180 days after the date of the letter contract or before 40% of the work is completed. And this could be for fixed price or cost type contracts. Last one there is the BOAs, basic ordering agreements, written agreement, but it's not a contract, right? It's basically just saying, the Navy or the Army needs general goods and services, and it's kind of like opening the door for a contract and to say, I guess, put contractors on standby of, hey, we might need this in the future, and then we'll define it with what do I want to say here? Task orders or delivery orders at a later date and time. Next slide.
Awesome. And as a reminder, if anybody has a question, I do see a couple hands that go up and down there from audience. If you have a question, use Q&A, use the chat so that we can see those, just to make sure that we don't feel like we have missed you on anything.
Yeah. Feel free. Let's make this a conversation. There's not too many of us here. So let's free flow with the conversation, or freestyle with the conversation, I should say. So let's talk about pros and cons of fixed price contracts. So Meg, we touched upon this before. So fixed price, again, that certainty of the cost. You know what you need to do, you know what you proposed, you know what you negotiated with, and try and stay laser focused with that. For instance, you may be apprehensive that the price of a certain service will rise unexpectedly. You kind of just, like I said, you have to keep an eye on what your expenses are and what you're actually incurring during the lifetime or the performance period of that contract. You know what the costs are, so you can budget for it. Especially, let's say if the period of performance is 5 years, you kind of know what to budget for those 5 years, and again, the set timeline. Cons, paying extra margins. This is more so on the government side of potentially the government overpaying if your costs come in less than what you agree to. So that's more for the government side. It is a rigid process for both the government and the contractor, again, because you're set to that. You're not really open to new technologies if within those 5 years that comes along, because it's a fixed price contract and there's not a lot of wiggle room for any sort of updates or improvements. Not recommended for mid to large scale projects, again, because what if new technologies come along in the next 5 years? I feel like we're constantly changing and updating. So, trying to keep it to smaller scale projects, or, things that are only going to take a year, and then the false certainty of costs. Again, that's on the government side and the contractor side, with the ups and the flows of the budgets. Next, do you have a question, Meg?
I do. So when we're defining a mid to large scale project, we're talking about like 3 to 5 years plus, or is it like 5 years plus?
I would say 3 to 5 years. I think that's a good range. I feel like every buying command is different with what they need, right? The types of goods and services they need to acquire. So, but I would define that as 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so anything under 3 years, you're more of a small scale.
Yeah. And keep in mind, when we're talking about the fixed price contracts, we're talking about well-established weapon systems, anything like goods and services. I say weapon systems. Prior to small business, I was the liaison for NAVSUP in Philly, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So they acquire major weapon systems. So you would see 3 to 5 years, but they're well established, right? So they know what they need, they know what the costs are, and it's just a matter of getting under contract. Yeah, so the pros and cons for cost type contracts. So with cost reimbursement and FFP with progress payments from the government are received at least on a monthly basis. Small businesses, I believe it's every 2 weeks, is what FAR states now. The contractor has sufficient flexibility in the design or any other aspect of the project. For cost type contracts, the risk to the contractor is minimal. This contract works best for actual cost of the project, is assumed to be below the project cost. And again, more risk goes to the government, but you're kind of agreeing to a set price or an estimated price prior to going under contract. Next slide. Contractor qualification. So I have this in here. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I really want the takeaway here to be the adequate financial resources, satisfactory performance record, and then the last one there is a good segue into the next slide, which is the eligibility to receive the award under the applicable laws and regulations. Next slide. So when we talk about laws and regulations, we are talking about needing an adequate accounting system prior to your first contract, cost type contract award. So what that is, it's based on the SF 1408, and I believe everybody is going to get these slides, right? So I have embedded there the checklist and the assertion and the SF 1408. SF stands for standard form. And it goes over all of the criteria needed to have an adequate accounting system. If you don't have one already, the contracting officer will request DCAA to perform this audit, and they will ask you to fill out that checklist and the assertion. The checklist is about 9 or 10 page PDF document, and it goes through all of the criteria that you need to have an adequate accounting system. You will answer yes or no. Yes, I can segregate direct versus indirect cost, and you would have to answer why. DCAA uses this as kind of like a go or no go for the audit. So if you've answered no to a few checklist items, we know you're not ready to support an audit. If you answer yes, but that narrative or the few sentences that you said to support yes, if that's lacking a little bit, we know you're not ready for an audit. We'll ask you, can you either update this or provide more information? If we get the warm and fuzzies and you've adequately answered all the questions, and we do call it an adequacy checklist, we will move forward with the audit. Things to note: contractors, small businesses like yourselves cannot request an audit. These audits have to be requested by either the buying commands, the contracting officer, DCMA, or your ACO. Unfortunately, contractors cannot request. Next slide.
We did have a question as well that said, is this adequacy accounting system to measure the accuracy of the data being provided, not specifically to what types of an ERP? Is that true?
The accounting system. Yep. So if you look at the checklist, you will see it's, I think, 12 criteria. It could be wrong. It could be a little bit more. Can you segregate direct versus indirect costs? Do you have, are you GAAP compliant? Do you have a timekeeping system? Your labor distribution, what does that look like? Can it be tied to your payroll records? Invoicing. Do your invoices include current and cumulative costs? And can they be tied back to the accounting system? And specifically, it's looking at the design of the accounting system. It's not looking at actual data from your system. So keep that in mind too. Did that answer the question?
They will let us know if it does not, but thank you.
We're gonna find out. All right.
We'll find out. Yes, he says
All
yes
right.
and thank you.
Yay. All right. Thanks, David. I see your question pop up now. All right. Okay, so we're good to go. So pre-award accounting system audit objectives. Again, we're looking at the design of the accounting system. Is it acceptable for that prospective award? Why are we looking at it? And it's because you are going to be billing the government based on actual cost incurred. So we want to make sure that your accounting system can accurately capture all of those costs and that you're actually putting the right information into your accounting system. Again, accumulating and segregating costs under federal cost type contracts. So hopefully it's easy peasy to accumulate cost under one contract, but what does it look like once you have 2 or 3 contract awards? How are you segregating those costs to make sure you're accurately, capturing those costs under the right contracts, so that we look at that as well. Now in our accounting system report, we will opine on if your accounting system is in operation or set up and not in operation. And to provide full transparency, DCAA's audit program, all of the steps that we provide include, or all the steps that we perform, including our risk assessment, right? You want to know what we're doing to assess risk to the government, is embedded in here. So you should be able to look that up. It's it's assignment number 17740. Next slide. Now, I hate when people read verbatim from the slides, but I'm going to do it in this case because I think it's really important. And I want to say it out loud, and hopefully it marinates or resonates with you all. And that accounting system, according to DFARS, means the contractor's system or systems for accounting methods, procedures, and controls established to gather, record, classify, analyze, summarize, interpret, and present accurate and timely financial data for reporting and compliance with the applicable laws and regulations. Whew. I say that because it's not just your systems. So, you have QuickBooks and your bestie, Joe Contractor down the street, has QuickBooks as well. Joe Contractor has an adequate accounting system from DCAA. He has the audit report. He's good to go. You have to have that as well, right? I mean, you can say I have QuickBooks, right? So it must be all good. And the answer is no, because all contractors have different policies and procedures, have different methods of accounting, have different ways that you guys classify, even down to a chart of accounts. It's different for every company. So that's why it's important that DCAA performs these audits at the contractor level and not at the system level. So, and I know I get this question a lot is, can you recommend a system to me? And no, I can't, because the system could be great, but maybe you're not using it correctly, or maybe you're not using it to the best of your ability. So that's why it's just important to take the time to break down all of the, what do I want to say here? Descriptions here with DFARS. And I will kind of get on the auditor high horse again and say, first and foremost, for every audit that we perform, we're going to ask you for policies and procedures. That's the first thing we do during our risk assessment, because we want to know how you operate your business. What are your internal controls? What does your timekeeping system look like? What does your billing system look like? How are you capturing costs? So we ask for that information and kind of write our own understanding of that. That's within our risk assessment. I see a question here popped up.
Yes.
Yep.
It says complies with applicable laws and regulations, in quotations. Do international firms need to be US GAAP compliant, or is the IFRS standard acceptable?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert on international, but I would say it depends. All jokes aside, check with the terms of your contract, or check with the terms of the solicitation. If you are being awarded a contract in an American contract or anything with FAR and DFARS references, chances are you should be adhering to these standards. But again, double check the contract. I will say we do have a European branch office that covers a lot of international requests. DCMA, we work a lot with international requests in DCMA. So I can follow up with that.
Perfect. Thank you. I know we do have another question. I'm not ignoring it. I just think we'll probably get to it a little bit later. So I want to make sure that we have time to discuss it, towards the end there. Also, when it comes to these sorts of, audits and doing business this way, it helps to have your ducks completely in a row, not just in the same zip code. So this is one of those places where you actually have to have things, in a place where they can be shown, and, that you know what you're doing and where you're doing it.
I like that. Summary of that. So, how can a small business prepare for pre-award accounting system audit? Blah, blah, blah. So look at that narrative, right? Make sure that 10-page narrative that we talked about, that checklist and assertion from a few slides ago, make sure you can answer yes to all of those. Make sure you can provide a reasonable sentence or two on how and why you said yes. Relevant audit history. So we will ask you, have you had any previous audit findings? And that is not a red flag against you. That is, are we concerned with it? Yes, but more so we're concerned with how did you correct that issue, right? So again, that's just part of our risk assessment for any contractor. Corrective action plans we talked about, providing relevant policies and procedures. I can't express this enough. That's really what we use to gain that understanding ahead of time, but prior to our audit procedures. Adequate support and documentation, again, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, making sure it's not just a yes, it's a yes, and here's the support for why I answered yes. Next slide. So these are some, not all, of the criteria. So again, how can you prepare? And this is where our audit procedures come into play when we talk about describing, demonstrating, and providing examples. You don't have to have actual data in your system. You just have to be able to demonstrate how your system is compliant with this criteria. And this is not all encompassing. Like I said, there's a lot to it. Generating basic financial reports, trial balance, general ledger, job cost ledger, profit and loss statement, or work/income statement. This is to show that you are GAAP compliant. Generally accepted accounting principles. That's what GAAP stands for. And then identifying and segregating costs, direct versus indirect, routinely posting to books of account. Hopefully you're doing that already with your timekeeping system, right? We have at least, what is it, weekly, bi-weekly, by month or monthly timesheets, right? So hopefully we're doing that already. Accounts with both direct and indirect time properly. So I could be the CEO of an engineering company. I wish. But if I'm a team of, if I'm the owner and also working it, maybe I'm doing 60% of my time to general and administrative duties for the company, but I'm also working maybe 40% of my time direct to a contract. It's properly logging that time and identifying those hours in your timesheet. So we talk about different job codes. Identifying and how you handle unallowable costs. That's an auditor's favorite topic. That is covered in the FAR 31-205 series. You can find all of the unallowable costs there. Properly segregating CLINs or contract line items, calculating indirect rates. We have a whole series on indirect rates. So Meg, we could talk about that at a different time. And then generating invoices to show current and cumulative costs. Next slide. Examples of non-compliance. So these are common non-compliances that DCAA does find when performing a pre-award accounting system audit. Again, confusing direct and indirect costs, maybe not properly segregating them, not posting at least monthly to your general ledger, improper timekeeping, we talked about that, failure to exclude those unallowable costs, claiming them as either direct or indirect. Inadequate procedures to ensure proper billing for subcontractors, and then invoices. I see that quite often. Not showing current and cumulative, just showing current, which is not good. Next slide.
This is the one that you print out and you stick with like the big red O with the line through it. That's where you put that.
Yep.
Don't do
just
these
don't do it. Just say no.
Right? It's your dare training in the workforce.
Right. Our adult dare training. We were just talking about that this weekend. That's so funny that we brought that up. That's like an unlocked memory. Contractor labor floor checks. So if you are performing on a cost type contract, chances are you may be selected for a floor check. What is that? That is where DCAA comes out and we interview some of your employees and see if, are you in line with your policies and procedures for timekeeping? What do your timekeeping internal controls look like? Are your employees real? Believe it or not, we have seen that where there's ghost employees. Performing assigned job classifications. So believe it or not, especially for T&M contracts, the time and material contracts, where anything where there's a labor category and labor qualifications within the terms of the contract, we may have to ask you for your employee resumes to make sure that they are, if they are performing in the right labor categories. If it says they need a 4-year degree in accounting, for example, I'm just using my background, and 15 years experience, that my resume accurately states that. So really important to stay up on that and make sure you have all of that ready within your, what do I want to say? Your records, your documentation and your records. Next, oh, and again, the purpose to address any deficiencies on a real-time basis, to make sure we're not catching things after the fact, and the again, just trying to lessen risk to the government.
That's fair.
Next
and
slide.
If I'm still working in government contracts as a ghost, it better be that like once in a lifetime contract.
But okay, so I'm missing that one. So labor and timekeeping system. So this is DFARS, again, the Defense Supplement to the Federal Acquisition Regulation, requires that contractors working on cost type contracts have a timekeeping system that identifies employees by intermediate and final cost objectives or final cost objectives. Intermediate means indirect and final cost objectives mean direct. So again, just making sure the proper job codes are there and employees are charging the right job code, whether it is direct, indirect, or maybe a little bit of both, which does happen as well. Labor charges must be based on either paper or electronic time cards. When we come out and look at or perform a labor floor check, again, we'll assess the internal controls, who has access to your employee time cards, who has access to change those, our employees signing off on, like the end of every pay period. I just did it today. I have to certify my timesheet, right? That the time I put there is correct and accurate. And then that's signed and dated. And then my supervisor signs and dates it, that they reviewed it, and it gets sent off to our payroll for processing. So we look at all of the aspects of that when we perform a labor floor check. Next slide.
Good reminder, today is the 15th. Put that on your note. Like, hey, remember my timesheet today if you have on this.
Timesheets are due. How can a small business prepare for a floor check? So these used to be super, super random prior to COVID, right? We would show up and be like, hey, we're here to do a floor check. Now it's kind of different because a lot of people are working from home. So it's important to keep an updated list of employees, ensure employees by location, if they are direct, are they indirect, and what types of contracts they're working on. Floor check will be unannounced. When I first came to DCAA, one of my first assignments was a floor check at a larger contractor in Northern Virginia, and their point of contact escorted me around looking for employees, yelling down the hallway, have you seen so-and-so? DCAA is here for a floor check. Again, discretion is key here, and they were not discreet. I had to cancel my procedures and start over at a later time so I could be unannounced. Ensure employees are recording their time at least daily. Again, clearly documented policies and procedures regarding timekeeping and payroll. A big thing here, work at home policy. What does that look like for your company? Every company is different. I usually work from home more often than not. My supervisor has my cell phone number, so she can contact me either Skype, Teams, Outlook, or my cell phone. So I'm pretty available. And I think that's important, and she knows my core hours, right? Or, hey boss, I'm starting late today, or I'll work late, or, I have to request some leave because of, if DCAA was coming in for a floor check, it's important to know where I'm at and be able to locate me. So next slide.
I have two questions real quick. For time reporting, is
Sure.
this the requirement that we do clock in, clock out? Like, do I have to do that?
No,
Okay.
You don't have to clock in, clock out unless the contract, it depends, unless the contract requires you to do so. I don't necessarily clock in, clock out. I have core hours. I have a set time where I am typically at work 7 to 3:30. Every company is different. It all depends on your policies and procedures as well, and your employee handbook. So there's no set clock in, clock out.
And
But
does
keeping track of your hours are key.
right. Does the project workflow setup on the accounting system count as an updated list of employees? Can we double dip there?
Ooh. Yeah. So does the project workflow? No. You should have, you're talking about within the accounting system, right?
Yes. Yep.
No, because you're talking about one specific job, I believe. What if you have multiple jobs?
Okay.
Right. So we get that a lot. Most of the time employee, because you want to be able to identify, are they direct or indirect? And again, what types of contracts are they working on? Are they working on Army contract C, Navy contract A, and whatnot? So you should have some sort of document outside of your accounting system that is up to date. But you could use that as a starting point. Sure. I don't see why not.
A good baseline, but then just have something a little bit
Yeah.
beyond that's designated as this thing. Cool.
Yeah, it could be used as a sanity check. Cost accounting standards. So full transparency, I am not a CAS expert, but DCAA has a lot of CAS experts. But I do want to talk about CAS for a little bit here, cost accounting standards, what they are, why they're established, and what that means for small businesses. Did I see one more question pop up?
We had one pop up that says, I believe it is less expensive if our accounting firm can perform many of these tasks. If we only have one single contract, is it acceptable to contract this out to our accounting firm?
You can contract anything out. It just depends on how you're going to pay for it and how you're going to claim those costs, you know, as direct or indirect and all of that good stuff. The answer is it depends.
I'm gonna start
We're going
finding
to
you for every
have
defense. Flag.
somebody start tacking, and we're going to see how many tacks we have by the end of this. So again, cost accounting standards, CAS, insinuates a principle or principles that need to be followed, establishes practices to be applied. Main focus here, uniformity and consistency. These standards govern measurement, assignment, and allocation of costs to federal contracts. And next slide. This, and I know it's really hard to see. I have it blown up on my screen here. The big takeaway here is this is a CAS applicability and coverage. This is my cheat sheet. I would have this up in my cube if I were in the office still. So you can blow that up at home and see how to go through the flow chart. And if we go to the next slide, I do have the exemptions blown up. So let's talk about, it's not only 8A certified, it is, it could be a self-certifying business, small business as well, for CAS exemptions. If it's a sealed bid contract, firm fixed price, adequate price competition, those are not CAS covered. You're basically looking at anything else but this. So these are the exemptions for CAS. So I'm guessing most of the exemptions for people here would be small business. Next slide. Modified CAS coverage. So, you know, let's go through the chart. Can we go? So there is a trigger if you go back 2 slides. If you go through that green part there is a trigger for CAS coverage if you are not exempt. Basically, if you're not exempt and you don't have prior CAS coverage, a trigger contract would be anything $7.5 million or more. And if you do not have a sum of $50 million in the current accounting period or the prior accounting period, if you haven't met that threshold, you are subject to modified CAS coverage. So if we can bounce back forward 2 slides. So modified CAS coverage, is the current award $50 million or more? Yes, you are subject to full CAS coverage. Does the business unit receive $50 million or more in net CAS coverage awards in the preceding cost accounting period? If the answer is yes, again, you are fully CAS covered. If the answer is no, again, for the less than $50 million. So again, you're looking at that $7.5 million to that $50 million threshold. The answer is within that realm. You're looking at modified CAS coverage. Again, this is for if you are not exempt from, if your business has grown. I know we have some maybe medium to large businesses here. So keep that in mind. Modified CAS coverage includes CAS 401, 402, 405, and 406. Consistency in estimating, accumulating, and reporting costs, allocating costs incurred for the same purpose, accounting for unallowable costs, and a cost accounting period. And if we go to the next slide.
Quick question, does this period, the cost accounting period, mean the fiscal year?
Yes. Well, it's your stated cost accounting period, but yes, your fiscal year. Some of them end fiscal year in 31, some of them are June 30th. Government is 9/30. All depends.
Okay.
So there was a study done. I'm on okay, so we're on the right one. There was a study done by the GAO that found a lot of overlap between CAS and GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles. They found that 7 standards of CAS and GAAP overlapped for cost measurement and assignment to accounting periods. I'm sorry, so basically accounting periods. Cost allocation, fundamental principles of government contracting, complex rules to government contracting. Again, 4 standards overlapped for each of those. So if you can see, there are 10 GAAP principles, and then the CAS, I have that there so you can see what they are. Like the high level, I should say, in case you didn't know that meant high level. The next slide is what I wanted to talk about, is that there is an overlap of CAS and FAR. So regardless if you are CAS coverage, if you are CAS covered, you still have to be compliant with the federal acquisition regulation. And we found that if you, and this is my cheat sheet, this is from my personal cheat sheet. So even modified CAS coverage, right? So standard 401, consistency in estimating, accumulating, and reporting costs, you should already be compliant with FAR 31201-1. Unallowable costs, right? We talked about that before, defining unallowable costs. That's CAS 405. You should already be compliant with FAR 31201-6. So use this as a guide. Being that you are already or should already be compliant with FAR, CAS is much more detailed. And I mean, it does get into that magnifying glass a little bit of the detail, the uniformity, the consistency. But I put this here to show that you're already there, halfway there, I should say. So did I see a question? Oh, do we have to drop at 2 p.m.?
He had to, a few more. They had to go, so they're good. We'll send the
okay.
As well, so.
We will, yes, and I can definitely speed this up. Actually, there's only like 2 more slides of actual content. Where was I? Slide 24, right? I didn't even realize the time. Meg, we've been having such a good time talking. All right, so next slide. Truthful cost or pricing data. I am a Virgo and I don't like change, so I will forever and always call it TINA, Truth in Negotiations. But that's the new name of it, is Truthful Cost and Pricing Data. Basically what this is, if you do not meet any of the exemptions, such as adequate pricing, competition, prices set by law, commercial items, or waiver by the agency head with whom you're proposing, you need to certify that your proposal package is current, accurate, and complete. And you also need to certify, again, your cost and pricing data, your proposal package is current, accurate, and complete. This kind of, how do I say this nicely for CYA, to cover our butts, the government's butt and your butt, for any updates in pricing that come, especially at the 11th hour of negotiations. Let's say you're proposing $500,000 in material as a part of your proposal. Again, it's anything over $2 million. I don't think I said that before either. But let's say, you got an updated price for your total material for this $3 million proposal. And instead of $500,000, it's now $460,000. Well, you got to tell the government that you have that updated price. You can't just bank that $40,000. That's, long story short, that's what that truthful negotiations is. Next slide. This is my paint a pretty little picture. I can't do graphics slide of the overlap between CAS, FAR, and TINA, showing you it is not scary. You have to be compliant with FAR all the time. Eventually, depending on the size of your business, and as you grow into that medium to large business realm, you will eventually be subject to CAS. So let's start, building up to that, right? Always keeping that in mind, so it's not a shock to your system when you do get those larger awards. And again, TINA, anything over $2 million, certifying your cost and pricing data. Again, your proposal package is current, accurate, and complete. Next slide. Frequently asked questions. I'm just gonna add, it depends, to all of these questions. How do I get a DCAA approved accounting system? You cannot. We talked about that before. Can I recommend QuickBooks, Deltek, Peachtree? Is Peachtree still a thing? It was in college, I don't know. But there's no set system. It's all in how you use it. It's all in your policies and procedures. It's all in the design and the setup of the system. How do I request DCAA to audit my accounting system? You cannot. Please don't ask me to. It all has to come from a contracting officer or federal agency requesting that. Is QuickBooks or any other accounting software application acceptable? An acceptable accounting system? It depends. And an accounting system is more than just a software package, right? Again, the policies and procedures, the controls, everything that DFARS, how you classify, analyze, interpret your costs, all go into that consideration. Next slide. DCAA Internet Resources. Katie is currently in the 21st century and made a QR code. So the first thing I want to point out here is the audit process overview for contractors. Information for contractors manual. It is a 105-page PDF document. I call it my little DCAA Bible. You can hit Control F within that PDF document and find SF 1408 accounting system. You want to define different types of overhead and general and administrative expenses. Those are just some examples, but it's a really good starting point for research. Directory of audit programs, we talked about that before. Full transparency with what we're doing. You can know ahead of time what we're going to do, what we're going to ask for, and how we're going to accomplish our goals during the audit. Checklists and tools. So the adequacy checklist, they are the go, no-go checklist for anything from a pre-award accounting system audit, pricing proposal, forward pricing, incur cost submission, and more. Next slide. Please take the survey. Please let me know how I'm doing. It goes to my boss, and I would like a good performance evaluation. So do with this information what you will. Next slide. This is my contact information. Yeah. Hopefully she's not on here. I got to go through the list of participants. This is my contact information. Please, please, please contact me. I would prefer email just because I'm in and out of these webinars all day, every day. And I get distracted very easily if you haven't noticed. So please email me, and I do answer emails, believe it or not. So that's all I have.
So somebody had said that the QR code for the outreach flashed by too fast, so I'm going to throw that back up there, just as a little throw out. A couple of questions we had out there. One is, how long is it currently taking if a CO requests a pre-award accounting system audit? How long does that take?
typically 60 to 90 days, depending on, it depends. So what does it
You almost got
depend
through
it?
it.
It depends on the support that you're giving us, right? As a contractor, are you supporting us, what do I want to say? Adequately supporting us? I don't know. How do I want to phrase this without
We're back
just
ducks in
making
a row.
sure they're right? Just making sure you have your ducks in a row, policies and procedures are there, and you are responsive to our request. That's the word I was looking for. If you're responsive to our request and we can get through everything, 60 days is ideal. If you are not responsive and we have findings, closer to that 90-day mark, because we have to, what is called, develop those findings for our audit report.
In other words, and an unofficial thing that did not come from the DCAA, don't make them hunt you down. They're
Nick said it, not me.
Exactly. Another question said, we have several contracts that were done as firm fixed price because the contracting officer didn't want to wait for an accounting system audit. Is there anything that they can do to get ahead of this? They're worried that they're going to lose out on contracts because the CO can't give them a cost type contract quick enough.
I mean, that's up to the buying command. Yeah, I can't tell them how to do their job.
So unfortunately, it's just kind of getting in there as early as possible and trying to set those.
Yeah, I mean,
but sometimes when it's a quick turnaround, like I understand it's hard to get that in. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do and decide if it's worth.
If you're ready to support an audit, have the contractor or have the CO request it. And then, it's having all your ducks in a row in place for that next round of contract awards if you're performing on an existing contract.
There you go. And last question that I see right now is we've seen some RFPs, the requirement to demonstrate financial capability exists, like a letter from a bank.
Mm-hmm.
How often should we expect to see that? Is that something we see often or is that like once off?
So I will say that's more of a question for DCMA, Defense Contract Management Agency. We used to do financial capability audits, but we have since stopped doing that, and DCMA took that over.
Okay. Awesome. If there are any additional questions that we didn't get to today, I know we're a little bit over time, and I thank you all for staying around with us. If there is anything additional, you can either reach out, to Caitlin. You can also reach out to ATI@govmates.com, and we will do our best to direct your question to the correct place and get that answered for you. Big thank you, Caitlin, to you for being here, and the DCAA, as well as everyone in the audience for joining us. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. That's where GovMates does most of their outreach and their announcements and things like that. And if you find that you have anything else that you need, whether it be, resources, introductions, or like we said, questions, reach out and let us know. We hope you have a great rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you in person or online at one of our upcoming events. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yes. Thanks, Meg. It was a pleasure.